Good morning, and welcome to Connections Radio Show. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and our show is all about exploring a wide range of topics that challenge us to see ourselves, our community, and the world around us that get us thinking, get us talking, get us imagining, get us connected, more aware, gaining a wider perspective, perhaps inspired to do something because we made the connection. It's the first Saturday of the month in April, and that means we're going to be able to have a chance to talk about the Eastside Freedom Library. And Peter Ratcliffe is my co-host for our Eastside Freedom Library shows. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Lori, and good morning to everyone out there.
And today's show, we're looking at housing.
Housing is a critical issue in racial and economic justice. Housing is a critical human right. And it's really exciting to have Cian Thomas of ABC Realty with us this morning because they're not just talking about housing and closing the gap, they're actually doing things to bring housing justice to people on the East Side.
Welcome, Cian.
Thank you.
So glad you're here. I remember when we first met, we were discussing how owning a home is really the root of long-term economic stability and financial being able to be financially, invested in the future.
Absolutely. The two primary drivers of wealth building in America historically have been home ownership and stock investment. And so home ownership has historically helped families to launch a business, use their equity to launch a business if they want to launch a business, to send their children to school and help pay tuition with their equity position, or to go to school themselves.
It's a root. It gives them roots to be able to do many other things.
Absolutely.
And so it at one level, it's a roof over your head. At another level, it's your financial future.
Yes.
And I also appreciate that ABC Realty, which is your realty,
Yes.
Is sponsoring the show today. So thank you for your support, for your vision for the future, for supporting better housing, and being part of the conversation to look to the future of what we could create. So thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Peter, the Eastside Freedom Library has looked at housing in a variety of ways, and there's a lot of different housing in the East Side that I just adore. You know, there's some that goes way back, and then there's some new. I'd love to have you both tell me about the Village on Rivoli that's taking place in the East Side that I hear is very innovative and has some exciting aspects to it.
You know, I think I'll go back and tell a little bit more of a historical story, and then I'll leave Cian to talk about the Village at Rivoli.
Wonderful.
You know, for many of us, the story of the East Side, for many of us who are not Indigenous people, the story of the East Side begins with the story of a place called Sweet Hollow, which was a place, a ravine that Phelan Creek ran through, providing water, where Swedish immigrants in the late 1840s and 1850s began to settle and really create DIY kind of houses and living circumstances in order to be close to work opportunities in the railroad yards in downtown St. Paul. And Sweet Hollow persisted for more than 100 years. And it really sort of depended on who you were and how you understood it, whether you thought of it as a community or you thought of it as a slum. I think many of the people who lived within it thought of it as a community. There were churches. There were other kinds of social institutions created in Sweet Hollow. And interestingly, at the same time, over generations, people made an effort to move out of Sweet Hollow and to move into what was called Railroad Island, Little Italy, Up Payne Avenue, Arlington Hills, to move to a place where housing was more stable, where they could create the kind of equity that Cian talks about. And they were replaced by newer immigrants moving in on their heels. And so the Italians replaced the Swedes, Mexicans replaced the Italians. And for 100 years, Sweet Hollow was a place where people got a start on the East Side. And I think it's very interesting to think about the Village on Rivoli, which which is a stone's throw from Sweet Hollow, where people are creating a different kind of community.
And if I can put another plug in for the Eastside Freedom Library, when you brought up Sweet Hollow, it reminded me on a walking tour that I went on that you hosted, and how the Eastside Freedom Library is about celebrating the East Side, and it's not just always in the four walls that you celebrate the Eastside Freedom Library. Sometimes it's on the walking tours, and you actually can understand by seeing, by walking, by looking, seeing a home that had moved from the East Side, Sweet Hollow.
Out of Sweet Hollow, yes.
Yeah.
But it's also that we don't just think about the past with nostalgia.
Yes.
But we think about the past as a place that we can learn from, and we're interested in those conversations between the past and the present. And I think the Village in Rivoli is a great example of rootedness in this history.
Cian, tell us about the Village on Rivoli.
So the Village on Rivoli is the largest new construction housing development in the city of St. Paul in over 40 years. And Dayton's Bluff Neighborhood Housing Services has been integral in moving the project forward. And we are now in phase 3 of that project. Phase 1 and 2 are 12 new construction homes, traditional 2 stories with attached garages, and the entire site will include an orchard. It will include a permanent community garden where we have partnered with Urban Roots to manage that garden. It will include a solar garden with Xcel Energy at the top of the site, and of course walking paths too.
And 98% have been sold in that first?
100% of phase 1 and 2 are sold, and the majority of the buyers, new homeowners, are people of color.
So that's an investment in their future as well.
Absolutely.
And that they have the path to be able to have the financial security that a home can provide.
Yes.
How exciting.
Yeah, it's the superest, coolest, grooviest thing happening.
I love the idea of almost having like a little hobby farm in the middle of a city.
Isn't that cool?
It is
and
wonderful.
You partner with the kids, and that is a youth program that teaches job skills through working in the soil and growing things and selling them at the community markets in the summertime, and they make an olive oil too.
Oh, well, and it hurts my heart because I see inner cities often not being a food desert. That there's not access to affordable fresh fruit and vegetables. And when I can see it being celebrated and being able to have it be affordable, and you can get your hands dirty in the dirt and see how it grows, and it's not just something at a grocery store.
Right.
It's something real that has a season, and that you learn time even differently when you understand how things grow and how they're harvested.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, there's a new one coming.
Yes, so phase 3 will come to market late fall of 2019, and phase 3 will face south and look over downtown St. Paul. Phase 1 and 2 looks west at the Capitol and the Cathedral, producing the best sunsets ever. If you're in there at night, it looks like Gotham City, Batman.
Oh my goodness!
So phase 3 will look south over downtown, and that phase is going to be more eclectic cottage style. We're calling them cottage style homes. To me, they look more like the stacked railroad car homes. So they're going to be super cool.
And not too far from the railroad, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, in a neighborhood that was once called, and still is, Railroad Island, because there were so many railroad tracks bifurcating the neighborhood that kids felt like they lived on an island.
And here, again, linking the bridge from the past to the future,
Yes.
we fast forward, and I understand there's also lots of good energy-wise savings in some of these. There's
Yes,
progressive-
they are all high quality, energy efficient, Energy Star rated homes produced by Dayton's Bluff Neighborhood Housing Services. So the phase 1 and 2 are about 1,500 square feet, 2-story homes with basements that are finishable, and some of them have walkouts. All of them have egress.
And affordable.
And affordable. If we were private sector building these homes, they would be about $350,000. But we're able to bring that product to market under $250,000 because of the subsidy that goes into these projects.
Isn't that terrific? So you're going to be having something coming up pretty soon, April 10th.
Yes.
Tell me about the April 10th.
We're excited to be partnering with Peter Ratcliffe and the Freedom Library. ABC Realty decided in 2019 we would not only take on Closing the Gap, but we wanted to be rooted in community. And what that means for us is partnering with other people and institutions and places in our community. So we kicked off this year with a client appreciation at the Cookie Cart and had a lot of fun with those folks. And on April 10th, we are partnering with the Freedom Library to host a community conversation on inequities in housing, and that's both renting and owning.
Some people, I have to imagine, think that it's just beyond what they are, that they could even dream of. And in being able to make it real and make it a path that folks can understand, I think is important to communicate. How do you navigate? And how do you trust? And who do you trust? So I think this will be an exciting opportunity for people to learn, and I encourage folks to go to the Eastside Freedom Library website and go to their event page. They also have it listed for April 10th. And time's running out, but we're going to have more conversation on this. We're going to hear some stories about real live people that had an impact through this program. So stay tuned. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey community, this is Cian Thomas from ABC Realty. We represent a diverse team of realtors here at ABC, and we're rooted in your community. We are the only brokerage with an intentional focus on the east side of St. Paul. We specialize in helping first-time homebuyers and people of color to find the home and the neighborhood of their dreams. We have agents who speak Spanish and Hmong, and to keep pace with the ever-changing demographics of the east side, we're adding agents who speak the languages of our communities. We're accessible and we're available for you. Face-to-face and over the phone, we'll help you each step of the way, whether you're buying or selling. We'll discuss the value of home ownership and how it can be leveraged to build your future. We are here for you, ready to put our experts to work for you. So learn more about us here at abcrealtytwincities.com. That's abcrealtytwincities.com.
Hi, this is Ken Hagelund, host of Living Healthy and Aging Well, inviting you to listen to our new show airing on Saturdays from noon to 1, where we talk about your health and your life and provide insights to living and aging well. Each week, we provide answers to important questions regarding health care, elder care, end-of-life care, and caregiver support to help you and your loved ones plan for the future and enjoy your highest quality of life today. Please join us every Saturday from noon to 1 for Living Healthy and Aging Well.
I'm Peter Ratcliffe from the Eastside Freedom Library, and I'd like to tell you about an historic place on Payne Avenue. Brunson's Pub is a place where history and passion are a part of every detail, starting with the menu. The Payne Phelan neighborhood arose from Dakota people who lived here for hundreds of years, and pioneering immigrant communities, Irish, Swedes, German, and Italians, who made the East Side their home. More recently, waves of new residents from Asia, Latin America, and Africa continue the rich immigrant history and are revitalizing the community's cultural life and economy. Come experience Brunson's Pub at 956 Payne Avenue and grab a discounted gift card when you mention that you're an AM 950 listener or a supporter of the Eastside Freedom Library. Be sure to check out brunsonspub.com.
In 1977, NASA launched the Voyager spacecrafts, satellites sent from Earth to study the farthest reaches of outer space. Aboard these Voyagers were the Golden Records, time capsules filled with images, sounds, and music that tell the story of our world. Astronomer Carl Sagan said, The launching of these records into the cosmic ocean says something very hopeful about life on this planet. But can we still find that hope? If you could send a message out to the universe today, what would you say? This April, join Sandbox Theater for the Golden Record Project, an intimate event 42 years in the making. The Golden Record Project is a search for connection, a hopeful call to other worlds, and a declaration that we are here. The Golden Record Project, April 12th through May 4th at the Sandbox. Tickets and information at sandboxtheateronline.com. The Golden Record Project. What would you share?
Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm Lori Fitz, and we're talking about housing and closing the gap today. I have Peter Ratcliffe, who is the co-executive director of the Eastside Freedom Library and the co-host of all of our first Saturday of the month shows with the Eastside Freedom Library. Welcome.
Thank you, Lori. Delighted to be here as ever.
And Peter, you have a guest who's also sponsoring our show today.
Yes, Cian Thomas from ABC Realty, and it's just so exciting to be with someone who is making change happen and making it happen on the East Side. So we're so glad to have Cian with us.
And making a commitment to close the gap. I first want you to tell me a little bit about this new landing page that you've created for closing the gap and what that means to you.
We decided at ABC Realty that we wanted to take on something bigger than ourselves and bigger than just buying and selling real estate, because we're a small brokerage here on the east side of St. Paul, serving largely the east side neighborhoods of St. Paul. And we decided that the homeowner gap in Minnesota was a formidable place and space that we wanted to be in. So we want to take this gap on. What is the gap? The gap is Minnesota has one of the highest homeowner rates in the nation. In fact, we are number 3 in the nation at 77% home ownership. However, families of color are not enjoying home ownership at the rate of white families in Minnesota. In fact, families of color in Minnesota own homes less than 41%. And the difference is what has become known as the gap. And that's the space that we play in, that we want to close that gap in home ownership here in Minnesota.
Well, I've taken a look at your page and I've looked at your staff, and I'm so impressed at the multicultural richness that you bring to your staff.
When I decided that I wanted to launch a real estate brokerage, I knew that I wanted the brokerage to look like the community it serves. And so we are intentional in being richly diverse in language and culture, because the East Side is so richly diverse in both language and culture.
So tell me again about what your goal is with this Closing the Gap program, and how folks can learn about the Closing the Gap program through your website.
Okay, so we are launching a new landing page called Closing the Gap MN, coming to a web place soon near you, and that's where we will identify our partners that we work with, and they'll be linked to that page, and we will continue a conversation about the gap, who's working in this space to address the gap. So there are plenty of players in the space.
And you can share a little bit about, I know that in the brochure that you've created, there's some stories.
Yeah.
Tell me some of those stories.
We love stories.
Yeah.
This is a piece that we've created to kind of capture the essence of our work in this space. And I thought it was really important to highlight some of the work that we've done in communities of color. In this piece, we highlight 2 families that now are proud homeowners on the village on Rivoli. The first family is a Karen family. They came to me back in 2013, and they wanted to build a home, but they didn't have a really good command of English. They had no credit to speak of, so I connected them with a lender, and in 2015, 15.
Just about 2 years
Yep,
later.
about 2 years later, we were able to get them into a home, and this is their story. They are a family with 2 sons and a daughter. They own a sushi restaurant on Lake Street in Minneapolis. They had no idea how to go about getting into a home, and in 2013 they were all in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
And so Tander, the daughter, she didn't have space to come home and do homework or cook because everyone was piled up on top of each other. And so this story talks about her journey and the impact it had on her grades, and now their successful crossing into home ownership here
Isn't
on the
that
East Side.
exciting?
Yeah.
And tell me about the other family.
The other family, I started working with this young woman, African-American woman. She was a new college grad. She had almost $70,000 in debt in college loans, and I got her...
And that in itself is a mortgage, too.
Huge, right? She was living at home with mom and dad. She wanted to buy her own home, and at that time, 2012, I was able to get her into an FHA mortgage product up to $135,000, which in and of itself was a challenging price point back in 2012 in that housing market. Well, that year, FHA decided to bump their mortgage interest rate up by 0.5 of a percentage point. That took her mortgage approval from 135 down to 70. She was not going to find an FHA-approved house for that amount. And so we had to put her back on the shelf. She came back 5 years later with a master's degree and a super cool, high-paying job.
But she remembered what you had done
Yes.
for her. And I think that's so important in the relationship building that you do, is that you problem solve and create a goal.
Absolutely.
That helps, because it can be very confusing.
Yes, real estate is the business of relationships, and you should be working with a trusted advisor, somebody who has your interests at heart. And here at ABC Realty, we don't just sell real estate. We build communities.
And you're part of the community.
And we're part of the community. We're very embedded in this community.
And when you get those folks in there, you're telling them about the East Side Freedom Library.
You know it.
And your role, especially with folks coming new into the community. You have an influx in the East Side. That's something that you rejoice in as well.
Well, the East Side is the most diverse part of St. Paul. We're about 40% Asian American, Hmong, Karen, Bhutanese. We're about another 20% East African and African American, and the East Africans themselves are mixed among several heritages: the Oromo, the Eritrean, the Amhara, the Somali, and then there's a large Central American, both Mexican and Salvadoran community. So the East Side, which was once a largely white, blue-collar neighborhood, is now extraordinarily diverse, a kind of United Nations of its own. And the East Side Freedom Library is a place where we want people to come and share their stories, the kinds of stories that Sienna's been sharing this morning. And because we think that those stories can inspire other people, and people who face discrimination in many, many ways can find the strength and agency through these stories to change their lives and build the base to enable other people to change their lives for the better also.
One thing that struck me when you mentioned about in her new home, she now had her daughter being able to do homework. Mm-hmm. You have parent programs at the East Side Freedom Library.
Right, we're doing a lot of intergenerational work. We have trained high school kids to collect digital stories from elders, and we have elders who are listening to kids talk about how they're trying to navigate this complicated beast called American society.
And the homes that we live in.
Yeah.
So stay tuned with us. We're going to be talking in the next segment about closing the gap, doing a little deeper dive, the history, and what's the vision for the future. So stay with us. It's going to be a great program.
I'm Peter Ratcliffe from the Eastside Freedom Library, and I'd like to tell you about an historic place on Payne Avenue, Brunson's Pub. Experience history and passion through the delicious menu, reflecting the East Side's diversity. The choices are limitless: salads, sandwiches, burgers, and shareable plates. Visit Brunson's Pub at 956 Payne Avenue and grab a discounted gift card when you mention that you're an AM 950 listener or a supporter of the Eastside Freedom Library. Be sure to check out brunsonspub.com.
This is New Beginnings, hosted by award-winning broadcaster and speaker Freddie Bell.
Freddie, this generation of the baby boomers, people are living longer, so the baby boomers are taking care of elderly parents.
Let's talk about your health, and specifically, let's talk about Medicare. Our show features the concerns of America's 78 million baby boomers in employment, finance, health and nutrition, and even entertainment.
Catch New Beginnings with Freddie Bell, Saturdays at 11 on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
I'd like to thank over 300,000 Minnesota homeowners for choosing Warner Stellian to be their appliance specialist. Now through April 15th, get our guaranteed lowest price on a KitchenAid or Bosch dishwasher, then save more with trusted free installation. Save hundreds on amazing laundry pairs by Whirlpool, smart refrigerators by Samsung, and beautiful kitchen suites by LG. Save on more brands and get the unmatched services you've come to expect through April 15th during Warner Stellian's Customer Appreciation Sale.
Native Roots Radio is proud to announce we've added an extra hour.
Yeah, Chuchke, 1 hour goes by too fast.
That's right, Uncle Curtis.
I'll have extra time to share important information about our secret animals.
And report national and native news from all over the country and Canada.
This new hour is sponsored by Robbins Kaplan LLP, dedicated to redefining excellence for high-stakes litigation representation in Indian country.
We are awake.
It's the age of artificial intelligence. 85-year-old Marjorie, a jumble of disparate, fading memories, has a handsome new companion, me, a hologram who's been programmed to feed her the story of her life back to her. If given the chance, what would you remember? What would you forget? Jordan Harrison's new play explores the mysteries of human identity and what technology offers. Prime Productions presents the play Marjorie Prime at St. Paul's Park Square Theater. Performances run April 19th to May 19th. For tickets, visit parksquaretheater.org.
Connections Radio Show is all about tapping into our hardwired hunger to connect. We examine meaningful connections to ourselves, our community, and the world around us. By opening the door to innovative insights by a wide variety of interesting guests, we'll make the connections to something bigger than ourselves. Join me, Lori Fitz, your host of Connections Radio Show, and together we'll make the connections. Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Hunter Haas. Saturday, chance of showers, cloudy with a high near 63. Sunday, chance of showers, cloudy with a high near 64. And Monday, mostly sunny with a high near 68. This week's EatLocalMinnesota.com restaurant of the week is Hazel's Northeast. They have classically inspired, creatively prepared comfort food. For dinner, enjoy dishes like their Swedish meatballs, pesto chicken, fish and chips, and more. Located at 29th and Johnson in Northeast Minneapolis, find out more at EatLocalMinnesota.com.
Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. It's the first Saturday of the month, so it's a focus on the East Side Freedom Library and the East Side community. And Peter Ratcliffe is our co-host for all of these shows. Welcome, Peter.
Good morning, Lori.
And Peter is also the co-executive director for the East Side Freedom Library. So give us some context. We've been talking about housing, and I promised the audience that in this segment we do a little deeper dive about some of the history. And of course, you always do a good job with setting the stage with history.
Well, you know, I think we're all blessed that we live here in Minnesota, where there's a great institution called TPT Channel 2, the local public television station. And they've been supporting a brilliant young African-American documentary filmmaker named Daniel Pierce Bergen. And Daniel has made a series of documentaries about Minnesota history. And his most recent documentary aired at the end of February, called Jim Crow in the North. And in that documentary, Daniel drew heavily on this great project that's been based at Augsburg in Minneapolis called Mapping Prejudice.
It's fascinating.
It is, and chilling.
It's chilling, and I understand they're going to be doing more in other cities, but groundbreaking work to see it visually
Right.
the racism.
Right.
A visual representation of how racism played out
Right.
in our own backyard.
Right. And through practices like restrictive covenants and redlining and the ways
And the covenants that absolutely discriminated
Excluded.
every single time African American, no matter what the covenant
Right.
was, it was always
Always.
going. And
Right.
they had Turks or Mexican or they had
Or
these
Jews.
or Jews,
Yes.
not allowed to buy property because the property value would go down.
Right. Right. Yeah. And
It was heart wrenching.
right. And you know, as I listened to Cian this morning, one of the things that comes back to me is many years ago I heard Randall Robinson give a talk at Macalester College, and at that time Randall had just published a book called The Debt: What America Owes to Black People. And he argued, much as Cian has pointed out already, and I think we'll hear more about, the ways that housing ownership was a way of economic security and intergenerational mobility. And so it became a way that historically white families built advantage or privilege from generation to generation to enable children to go to college, to enable children to become homeowners. And so it became cumulative. And for those who were denied through restrictive covenants or redlining or straight out hostility, like the Arthur Lee family faced in South Minneapolis in the 30s, or the William Francis family faced in St. Paul in the Cretan neighborhood in the 1920s, to literally be driven out of a neighborhood, to have a cross burned on your lawn, and to get the message that people of color were not welcome. And I think many of us would like to think that those kinds of things only happened in Alabama or Mississippi. And Daniel's film really shows us that Minnesota was part of the United States and part of the way institutionalized white supremacy worked.
And a brilliant title, Jim Crow of the North.
In the North.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, none of that will change by itself. It takes collective action, and it takes intelligence.
And intentionality.
And taking real steps. And that's what Closing the Gap is about. That's what the work that ABC Realty is doing. And you know, one of the things I want to emphasize is I so appreciate that they're not only doing that work, but that they want to come to the Eastside Freedom Library and have a public conversation about it, so that the rest of us can learn about what also is being done, and so that we all come away with a sense of there is something that we can do. And so, you know, I want Cian to share with us more about the consequences of home ownership and the many, many ways that it helps families to improve their lives and the next generation's lives.
And I also want to thank Cian for your willingness to support this conversation by sponsoring the show and giving us a chance to really do a deeper dive on how important this is and your vision for Closing the Gap.
Thank you. Thank you. And there's no I want to share a couple of little factoids with you in my research. But families that own their home, did you know that they are 16% more likely to participate in parent-teacher conferences? I tell you, I used to laugh at my children's school administrators, and I always see them, you should just give me an office here because I'm always here. And they did. One year I ended up working at the school and had an office. But I always felt so privileged to be able to be there for my sons when they were in school, because, you know, young Black and brown boys need advocacy in school. They definitely need advocacy. So home ownership improves the likelihood that those parents will participate. Homeowners are 28% more likely to vote. Voting matters.
That's an interesting statistic, isn't it? Yeah. Is there a sense that there's a security and that there is ownership in the community, and that with that voting matters because it represents your roots in that community?
I think that's part of it. And I think on the flip side, when you are mobile, when you are a mobile renter and you're constantly moving, you never grow roots anywhere. And beyond daily survival, you're not thinking of where can I make my voice matter. You're busy surviving and you're not thriving.
Or even having the chance to look at what are the problems in the community,
Right.
because your own problems of just survival mode are at the forefront.
Yeah, it brings me back to the book Eviction, which is a very, very powerful read if you haven't read it. But it is a deep dive into several Milwaukee families during the 2008, right after the big mortgage tsunami of 2008. And he does a beautiful job, heart-wrenching job of following these families
and the consequences
of surviving and not thriving, because it affects all of us.
Absolutely. Did you have a couple other
Well,
statistics?
I just want to jump in and
go
say
for it.
about the book that this year, the St. Paul Public Library system, under the leadership of Catherine Pankert, picked this book, Matthew Desmond's Evicted, as one of what they're calling Read Brave. Wow. And so there have been discussions, including discussions in which panelists have themselves been homeless, who have read the book and talking about their stories in relationship to the stories in the book and leading the conversations toward policy and action. And so I'm so pleased that the public libraries have been taking leadership in promoting the kind of conversation that Sienna is now participating in and providing us with concrete forms of action that we can take. So A, get educated. B, have a conversation. C, do something. And I think that's a pretty good formula for how we begin to address the kind of issues that have brought Sian to us today.
According to the Home Ownership Center, there are 64,000 families of color here in Minnesota that could buy.
And they're not?
Wow.
And there are,
barriers.
They don't believe they can buy. They don't think that their credit score is good enough. Anybody who's renting now in this tight rental market that we have today can probably afford a mortgage.
And be able to be paying approximately probably the same amount, or maybe
Absolutely,
even
or
less.
less.
Yeah. Tell us some more, Sian, about the way home ownership makes a difference.
Well, as I said, home ownership really does stabilize families, and when we have stable families, we have stable communities. We have children that are more successful in school because they develop longer-term relationships with the teachers and their peers. So children do better in school. Families that own are more likely to report suspicious or undesirable activity on their block.
Neighborhood watch.
Exactly.
Because it's your neighborhood.
Because it's your neighborhood. You have pride and ownership, definitely. So there are so many soft benefits to home ownership. Families in Minnesota that rent are 26% more cost burdened than families in Minnesota that own. So these are some striking numbers that impact. Whether you think that's not your problem, it is your problem because you are going to at some point come face to face with somebody who's out there struggling, who's locked out of home ownership.
A question for you that I always like to ask about your vision for the future. In closing the gap, what would that look like? And is that a potential for 20 years, 30 years, 5 years? What does closing the gap look like?
Closing the gap looks like building public awareness around the gap that exists today in Minnesota.
So it's, as you said, get educated.
Yep, get educated.
That more people realize that, that housing is an issue and it's not a fair for all system.
Correct.
And
absolutely.
And we could work towards a fair for all system.
Absolutely. We can work towards more inclusivity in home ownership, especially among families of color in Minnesota. When we all do better, we all do better.
I remember Mr. Wellstone saying that. Also, I would assume, since you said there was 60%, how many people of color are eligible that are not?
According to the Home Ownership Center, there are 64,000 families.
So would that
families?
Families.
Yes.
So if you have 64,000 families, could that look, closing the gap in the future, could that be reduced down by half, maybe? That they're, that the families are no, and 34,000 of those families are now?
That would be beautiful, right? Right? They would contribute to, we'd have 34,000 more families that could contribute to local economies, right? Because a neighborhood is made up of commercial quarters, which are small businesses, right? And housing that supports those commercial corridors. People that live in that housing, that do business in that neighborhood, creates that local neighborhood economy.
And more stories to share.
Yeah.
More stories to learn from each other, because there is a sense of security in being in your home and getting to know your neighbors and being part of a community that you want to grow with.
And being role models for others. Whether you even set out to be a role model or not, that kids of color on the block who see other families of color that do own their homes know that it's possible. It could be my story.
What I would love is a sequel documentary in 20 years that can go, that was then and this is now.
Right.
And bring back some of the beauty of the integrated neighborhoods that were destroyed.
Yeah.
And what does it look like to have a beautifully integrated neighborhood that's fair for all?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
More on that in the next segment. We're going to talk about upcoming activities as well as the April 10th program at the Eastside Freedom Library. So stay tuned. We'll tell you more about it.
It's the age of artificial intelligence. 85-year-old Marjorie, a jumble of disparate, fading memories, has a handsome new companion, me, a hologram who's been programmed to feed her the story of her life back to her. If given the chance, what would you remember? What would you forget? Jordan Harrison's new play explores the mysteries of human identity and what technology offers. Prime Productions presents the play Marjorie Prime at St. Paul's Park Square Theater. Performances run April 19th to May 19th. For tickets, visit parksquaretheater.org.
Art lovers, it's time to celebrate, learn about, and collect local art at the St. Paul Art Crawl, running April 26th to 28th. The Spring St. Paul Art Crawl, presented by the St. Paul Art Collective, is a must-do experience that you will love. Over the weekend, you will have the chance to explore a wide variety of art while touring through local artist studios, lofts, and galleries. Up for purchase will be paintings, photography, pottery, sculpture, fiber arts, and more. The Art Crawl sprawls over 34 locations. Join the Art Crawl and discover outstanding art for your own. And when you buy local art, you're providing to artists so that they may continue to create the art we love. The Metro Transit is supporting the local art community too, with free transit passes. Download your pass to ride buses and light rail for free during the Art Crawl. Be sure to get details at stpaulartcrawl.org. That's stpaulartcrawl.org.
It's the age of artificial intelligence. 85-year-old Marjorie, a jumble of disparate, fading memories, has a handsome new companion, me, a hologram who's been programmed to feed her the story of her life back to her. If given the chance, what would you remember? What would you forget? Jordan Harrison's new play explores the mysteries of human identity and what technology offers. Prime Productions presents the play Marjorie Prime at St. Paul's Park Square Theater. Performances run April 19th to May 19th. For tickets, visit parksquaretheater.org.
Tom Hartman here for All Energy Solar. One of the myths about solar is that you save more if you wait, but waiting to switch can actually cost you more. While tax rebates make solar affordable, those rebates are often limited and decrease over time. So when you wait, you risk losing some of the incentives that make solar so easy to afford today. And besides, the sooner you get your All Energy Solar system, the sooner you reduce or even eliminate that high electricity bill. Make the switch today at allenergysolar.com.
Hey community, this is Cian Thomas from ABC Realty. We represent a diverse team of realtors here at ABC, and we're rooted in your community. We are the only brokerage with an intentional focus on the east side of St. Paul. We specialize in helping first-time homebuyers and people of color to find the home and the neighborhood of their dreams. We have agents who speak Spanish and Hmong, and to keep pace with the ever-changing demographics of the east side, we're adding agents who speak the languages of our communities. We're accessible and we're available for you. Face-to-face and over the phone, we'll help you each step of the way, whether you're buying or selling. We'll discuss the value of home ownership and how it can be leveraged to build your future. We are here for you, ready to put our experts to work for you. So learn more about us here at abcrealtytwincities.com. That's abcrealtytwincities.com.
Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm Lori Fitz, and we've been talking about closing the gap in housing, and we've had a wonderful conversation. And as you know, this is the first Saturday in April. On the first Saturday, we always have the opportunity to be focusing on the East Side and the East Side Freedom Library. And Peter Ratcliffe is our co-host for all those shows. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Lori. It's great to be here.
You know, and I want to just say thank you and a shout out to you for always bringing good guests.
It's easy. There are so many great people on the East Side. We're the state of Minnesota's most under-recognized resource, the East Side of St. Paul.
And most diverse and most celebrating the diversity.
You bet.
So introduce our guest.
Yeah, so today we've been fortunate to be talking with Cian Thomas, who is the founder of ABC Realty and someone who is walking the talk and helping us to close the gap in housing on the East Side.
And sponsored our show today. Thank you for not only being part of the conversation and sharing the conversation, but promoting the conversation, that this is an important conversation for all to have.
Thank you.
You've got the Eastside Freedom Library program coming up on April 10th, but first I want us to talk about a home tour in Minneapolis as well.
Every year, last weekend in April, we have the Minneapolis-St. Paul Home Tour. And every year, Dayton's Bluff Neighborhood Housing Services, which is one of my larger nonprofit development partners, has a project on the tour. This year, we will have a scattered site new construction home on the tour in Payne-Phelan. So come on out to the Minneapolis-St. Paul home tour last weekend in April. There are hundreds of super cool projects that people will open their homes to and share with you on the tour. It's a really fun time.
Let's give your website to get to your ABC Realty.
Yes, you can visit our website at abcrealtytwincities.com. You can look at our featured listings. You can link to our soon to come website on Closing the Gap MN to follow the conversation on what is the gap here in Minnesota, who are the players that are actively working in that space to close that gap.
And Peter, tell me more about the April 10th event.
So again, as I said, the idea is to get educated, then have a conversation, then do something. So the conversation in the middle there, the conversation is going to be on April 10th at the Eastside Freedom Library. And Cian and her team at ABC Realty have brought together a group of partners who all have a handle on different parts of solving the gap in housing. And so I'm going to ask Cian to tell us who else is going to join us for that conversation and what we can look forward to.
I'm excited to bring to the table in that conversation Jim Urchel of Dayton's Bluff Neighborhood Housing Services. This guy is a guru in housing. He's a guru in affordable housing development, and he builds a product that serves families at 80% up to 115% of area median income. And what that means is Jim uses some subsidy on his projects. It could be in land acquisition, the subsidy, or it could be in the actual construction of the project, or both, so that he can build a market rate product, but bring it to the market at an affordable cost. An example would be the Village on Rivoli. Those homes, private market rate, they'd be about $350,000, and we're able to sell them to families under $250,000 because of that subsidy. So he's one player,
right?
And he's walking the walk and talking the talk.
Yeah.
Okay. The other partner we have coming to the table is Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity. Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity, they work in the space of 60 to 80% area median income, and they have an amazing new mortgage loan product that they'll be talking about that helps families overcome the barriers of homeownership, because oftentimes the barrier isn't they can't make a monthly mortgage payment. The barrier is the entry cost. The entry cost. So if we could bring a product that's more affordable, and we could layer it with down payment and closing cost assistance, that's what we at ABC Realty are really expert at doing.
What I love about this partnership is that you've got the Eastside Freedom Library that has a lot of trust in the community, has got doing a lot of outreach, and you've got an expertise in housing, and it's a matter of how do you reach the folks with the education, and how do the folks get opportunities to learn about.
Right.
So I see that this is a fabulous way to really maximize both of your messages.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll also have the Home Ownership Center there as well, and the Home Ownership Center is kind of like the mini think tank, right, in Minnesota. They own the first-time homebuyer homestretch class coursework, so they are the ones that bring that education piece to the table, and they also are a data manager and analysis. So they track the foreclosures in Minnesota. They connect people with foreclosure prevention counseling. So they're big players, and they're at the table April 10th as well. And we hope to have a Project for Pride in Living. And they're historically in Minneapolis, but they're making their way to St. Paul in a more in a more of a scattered site opportunity. So we hope to have them there, and they work in that 60 to 115% area median income, and they also have some assisted living communities that they've done as well.
Well, Sian, thank you for all the work that you're doing, for the commitment that you have to close the gap, and for providing an opportunity for financial stability in the future for many folks that may not realize that they have that opportunity waiting for them. They just need to have a nudge and a conversation, and then go do something.
And then go do
Absolutely.
something. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, before we go, we have a minute or so that I want to make sure that we do a few highlights of the upcoming other activities at the Eastside Freedom Library.
So I want to mention that throughout the month of April, we will be hosting the Minnesota Humanities Center's exhibit, Why Treaties Matter. It's very important when we talk about homes and stability that we recognize that we're all living on land that was once Dakota land here in Minnesota, and that the Dakota people are part of the present and part of our future. They're not just part of the past. And so we're using this exhibit as an opportunity to have conversations with Indigenous people and learn their experiences and figure out with them how we can all learn together and build a better community together. And then really in a very similar vein, we're going to be hosting the remarkable Hollis Watkins, who is the last living leader of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, on Friday night, the 19th of April. Hollis is going to come, and he's going to make us all sing. And so singing is going to be a part of absorbing the lessons of the civil rights movement of the 60s. So look at our website, eastsidefreedomlibrary.org, to learn more about what's going on.
And check out abcrealty.com.
abcrealtytwincities.com.
There we go.